They cut her off at exactly 2 minutes because the timer gave them a clean excuse to do what they already wanted to do: silence her without sounding like they were silencing her. Time, Board President Randall Pierce said, tapping the microphone with a practiced little smile. Thank you, Ms. Harris. We have to move on. Nia Harris stood at the podium with her notes still in her hand. She was 39, black, and dressed in a navy blazer that still smelled faintly of her son's laundry detergent because she'd been folding clothes before she came. Her voice hadn't even reached the part she came for. She'd used her first 90 seconds the way every parent is trained to use them in rooms like this. Polite introduction, calm tone, no anger, no accusations, just facts. She'd tried to be the kind of reasonable black parent school boards claim they respect, and still, they cut her off. I'm not finished, Nia said, keeping her voice steady. Randall's smile tightened. Rules are rules. Behind him, 5 board members sat in a row like a wall. White, comfortable, some bored, some irritated, one scrolling on a phone like Nia's child was background noise. The superintendent, Dr. Elaine Kessler, sat off to the side with her hands folded and her expression neutral in that administrative way that says I'm above the conflict, even when I create the conditions for it. In the audience, people shifted in their seats. A few black parents nodded at Nia in quiet encouragement. A white parent in the front row smirked like Nia was being difficult. A local reporter held a pen still, watching. Nia's hands tightened around her notes. I signed up for public comment, she said. I followed the rules. I'm speaking about my son being targeted at Brookvale Middle School. Randall leaned closer to the mic. Ma'am, we've heard multiple comments about discipline policy tonight. We can't allow personal grievances to dominate the agenda. Personal grievances. That phrase was another leash. It turned her child's pain into an inconvenience. Nia took a breath and said, It's not personal when it's a pattern. Randall's eyes narrowed. Ms. Harris, step away from the podium. A murmur moved through the room. Nia felt heat rise up her neck, but she kept her face calm. She'd promised herself she wouldn't give them the satisfaction of calling her emotional. She stepped back half a step, but not away. I'm going to say one more thing, she said, voice steady. You keep talking about behavior like it happens in a vacuum. My son is being spoken to differently, punished differently, labeled differently, and I have proof. Randall's smile returned, sharp. We don't accept proof during public comment. That was when Nia reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Not waving it around, not dramatic, just holding it up. Randall's voice hardened. Ma'am, Nia looked directly at the superintendent. Dr. Kessler, you told me in your office that you had no evidence. My son's teacher said what he said. You told me it was my son's perception. Dr. Kessler's eyes flickered. Nia tapped her screen. So I brought evidence, Randall snapped. We are not doing this. But the room had already shifted, because Nia wasn't bluffing. She wasn't begging. She wasn't guessing. She had something they couldn't talk around. The board tried to move on anyway. Randall raised his hand like a conductor. Next speaker, a voice from the back cut in. Mr. President, wait. It was Marilyn Cho, the board's secretary, Asian woman, early 40s, usually quiet, usually invisible. She held a small laptop and looked uneasy, like she was stepping out of her assigned role. Randall glared. Ms. Cho, Marilyn swallowed. She submitted an audio file to the board email this afternoon. It's attached to the agenda packet. Randall froze. Dr. Kessler's posture stiffened. The room went very quiet in that specific way it gets when people realize something official is about to happen. Something that can't be unhappened. Randall recovered quickly, too quickly. We do not play recordings during public comment. Nia's voice was calm but lethal. Then why did you accept it into the packet? Randall's mouth tightened. Ms. Harris, step away. Nia didn't move. Play it, Randall snapped. Absolutely not. And that's when the local reporter stood. Mr. Pierce, the reporter said, if it's in the board packet, it's part of the public record, correct? Randall's face darkened. This meeting is not for... Another parent spoke up. A white dad in a polo, one of the involved PTA types, said, if there's a recording, the board should hear it. That's the point of accountability. A ripple of agreement spread through the room. Even people who didn't like Nia didn't like the idea of a board hiding evidence in public. Randall looked around and realized he was losing control. He turned to Dr. Kessler, searching for support. Dr. Kessler's expression stayed neutral, but her eyes were tense. She didn't want that audio played. That was obvious. Nia looked at Dr. Kessler and said quietly, "You told me my son was lying." Dr. Kessler didn't respond. Marilyn Cho, hands trembling slightly, said, It's already in the record." Randall's jaw worked. He leaned into the mic. "Fine," he said sharply. 30 seconds. For context only." Nia nodded once. "That's all it needs." Marilyn connected her laptop to the room's speakers. The sound system popped lightly. The audience leaned forward. Phones came out, not to film Nia, but to capture what the board couldn't control. Marilyn clicked play. At first there was classroom noise, chairs scraping, students murmuring. Then a male voice, clear and irritated. "Mr. Dalton Reeves, 8th grade social studies teacher. You people always have an excuse," the voice said. A few people in the room inhaled sharply. The audio continued. "You're just like your dad," Reeves said, tone sharp. "Always acting like you're a victim. Sit down before I call security." A pause. A smaller voice. Nia's son, Jamal, 13, trying to explain something. "I didn't." Reeves cut him off. "Don't talk back, and wipe that look off your face. You're not scary." The room went dead silent. Then Reeves again. Quieter but worse. "You need to learn your place in this school." Nia didn't move. Her face stayed calm, but her eyes were wet. In the recording, you could hear a student whisper, "Yo!" Then Reeves, "I don't care who hears me. You'll do what you're told." Marilyn stopped the audio. The room stayed frozen in stunned silence for 2 full seconds that felt like 20. Randall Pierce's face had lost its color. "Doctor." Kessler stared at the table in front of her like it might open and swallow her. One board member whispered, "Oh my God!" The reporter's pen moved fast. Nia finally spoke, voice steady but shaking at the edges. "That's why I'm here." Randall cleared his throat, trying to regain authority. This is highly inappropriate to..." A board member, Denise Holloway, white woman, late 50s, usually aligned with Randall, cut in sharply. "No, what's inappropriate is that this happened." Randall snapped his head toward her. "Denise?" Denise didn't back down. "We just heard a teacher tell a child to learn his place. Are we going to pretend that's a behavior issue?" Another board member, an older black man named Calvin Monroe, spoke quietly for the first time that night. "Mr. President," he said, "you cut this parent off while evidence of misconduct sat in our packet. That is unacceptable." Randall's throat worked. "We weren't aware," Marilyn Cho said softly. "I emailed it to everyone at 2:13 p.m. Randall's face tightened. Nia looked at the board and felt the room finally listening, not because she was a parent, but because a recording had forced them to. She hated that, but she used it. "My son was suspended for defiance," she said, voice clear now, "because he asked why he was being singled out. That's what you call defiance. That's what Mr. Reeves calls defiance. And when I came to Dr. Kessler, she told me there was no evidence." Dr. Kessler's lips parted slightly. "Ms. Harris," Nia didn't raise her voice. "Don't." Dr. Kessler closed her mouth. Randall tried again to control. "We will refer this to HR," Calvin Monroe cut in. "Tonight, not later. Tonight we acknowledge what we heard." Denise Holloway nodded. "Agreed." The room murmured in support. Randall's voice went tight. "We can't make personnel decisions in public session." Calvin Monroe replied, "We can vote to place him on immediate leave pending investigation. We can also vote to review the discipline data by race, since this parent is clearly describing a pattern." Randall looked around again. He could see it. If he fought this, the board would split publicly. The room would revolt. The story would grow. He swallowed. "We will take a 5-minute recess." He slammed the gavel lightly, too hard for someone trying to appear composed, and the board filed into a side room. Nia stood still at the podium while people turned toward her. A black mother in the second row whispered, "Thank you." A white parent who'd smirked earlier looked down at his lap. The reporter approached Nia quietly. "Ms. Harris," she said, "did you record that yourself?" Nia nodded. "My son did. He was scared. He hit record because nobody believed him." The reporter's eyes softened. "May I quote you?" Nia's voice was steady. "Yes, quote me, because they only listen when it's public." 5 minutes passed. 10. The board delayed because they were scrambling for the least damaging response. When they returned, Randall looked like he'd aged a year. "We have heard serious allegations," he said, voice careful now. "The superintendent will place Mr. Reeves on administrative leave pending investigation. We will also commission an independent review of discipline disparities at Brookville Middle School." Nia didn't celebrate. She had learned to distrust promises. She asked, "Will my son's suspension be removed from his record?" Dr. Kessler cleared her throat. "We will review," Calvin Monroe said firmly. "Yes, it will be removed pending outcome, effective immediately." Randall glanced at him, then nodded stiffly. "Yes." Nia exhaled slowly. Denise Holloway added, voice tight with anger, "And we owe this parent an apology for being cut off." Randall's jaw clenched. He looked at Nia, and for the first time his voice wasn't confident. "Ms. Harris, we apologize for how this was handled." Nia stared at him. "You apologized because the recording played, not because you cared when I spoke." Randall flinched slightly. Nia continued, calm and clear. "Next time a black parent stands here, don't make them bring an audio file just to be heard." Silence. Then Calvin Monroe nodded once, slowly, as if sealing it into record. After the meeting, parents surrounded Nia. Not for selfies, not for drama, but for solidarity. One father said, "My daughter said the same teacher talks to the black kids different." Another mother whispered, "They suspended my boy for tone." Stories poured out like water finally finding a crack. Nia wrote names down, dates, teachers, incidents, because she understood the next phase. Systems don't change because of one recording. They change because patterns get documented until denial becomes impossible. 2 weeks later, the district announced Mr. Reeves had been removed from the classroom duty. The independent review began. The school's suspension rates, disproportionately black, were finally discussed in a room that couldn't pretend not to see them. Jamal's suspension was erased. A note appeared in his file stating the discipline action was rescinded. It didn't heal what he'd felt in that classroom, but it mattered. Records follow kids. One evening, Jamal sat at the kitchen table doing homework and said quietly, "Mom, did I do wrong recording him?" Nia looked at her son, tall for his age, eyes older than 13 should require, and said, "No, you did what you had to do to protect yourself." Jamal nodded slowly. "I hate that I had to." Nia's throat tightened. "Me too." And that was the ending. They cut off the black parent because they thought the microphone belonged to them, because they believed they could keep personal grievances out of the record and keep the system comfortable. Until the audio recording played in the room, and suddenly the truth had a voice they couldn't interrupt.